is it necessary that I do my PhD right after my master's, or can I just come back to it at some point?
This is the ultimate degree that you can in the country.
But when I think of PhD, it's always related to science. But you said people from a corporate background also enroll. So what kind of subject do they normally choose?
See, Inspire is basically an ecosystem. It is not a service provider which guides you only through the admission part and gives you one-to-one mentorship.
So I've got a lot of friends who are doing PhD abroad as well as in India. And even though I know a lot of people who are doing it, I myself have got to admit I have no idea what it means. So in simple terms, can you explain to me what exactly PhD is?
Definitely, Malavika. The first thing is PhD is possibly the ultimate degree that you can ever get in a country like India. Because if you look at other programs like PDF, which is postdoctoral fellowship, not many private universities are catering that. Plus, in case of PhD, wherein like lots of students are enrolling for PhD program, basically like multiple purposes are there. Might be to create us a personal brand, and maybe it might be a requirement for their job too. Now it all depends on what sort of a requirement that you as a student have. Plus, when it comes to PhD program, many students while doing their bachelor's or master's, they study subjects they are least bothered to study, right? Now PhD is a program which really caters to your aspiration. Let's say you are interested in something like a digital marketing, and you can actually focus on one single point, which is digital marketing, and complete a research on that. Now, this is what PhD helps you to do, and it shows your expertise on that particular domain.
Okay, so I understood that point, but is it necessary that I do my PhD right after my master's, or can I just come back to it at some point?
See, it all depends on what you're planning for the next 5 years or 10 years in your career. Now, there was a time when we used to get a lot of students who were having around 5 years or 10 years or 15 years of experience, and after that they used to join for PhD program. Of late, what you're seeing is, now students right after their masters, even they're enrolling for PhD program. The major change is, now in every job market, it will reach a saturation point at once, right? About 10 years back, we had plenty of people who had bachelor's degree. Now, what happened then was lots of students enroll for master's program so that they get separated from the masses. Now, what is happening is there are plenty of students or job aspirants who are having master's degree. Now, for you to separate yourself from the masses, you have to have a degree higher than that. Now, that is where PhD helps you. Plus, PhD is only degree you can visibly show the impact of a PhD program with your business card itself. You don't have to show your resume to anyone. With your business card or visiting card, the degree will be showing right there. So that is a basic difference.
Right. Okay. Well, so would you suggest for someone who wants to pursue PhD in their career, would you suggest that they do it right after their master's, or once they gain experience, maybe like 10 years down the lane or something?
See, if you have a clarity where you're heading to when it comes to your career, then you can definitely do your PhD right after your master's. Now, most of the students, what we are seeing these days is they'll do their bachelor's, they'll do their master's as per their dad's wish or their relative's wish or whatever their cousins say. And after that, they'll try multiple career in the next 5 or 6 years. Now, if you are someone who's planning to switch your career every 5 years or every 2 years or 3 years, then possibly PhD is not the right thing to do. If you have a clarity that you will definitely go towards that particular career right from the day one, then you are a perfect fit for a PhD course.
Right. Well, so you do have a platform where you offer PhD guidance and mentorship and all of that. So what kind of students do you normally have?
Mostly we have all the CXOs, directors of top companies, principals and teachers from schools and professors. So students across different areas are there. From different career background, lots of students are enrolling. Now, if you talk about PhD enrollments about 10 years back, mostly professors were enrolling, school principals or teachers were enrolling, basically people from academic background, they used to enroll. If you look at what is happening in the last 3-4 years, people from corporate background are they're enrolling for PhD program. Not even private sectors, even students from public sectors are enrolling for PhD program.
Okay. Well, I'm not an expert in this field, but when I think of PhD, it's always related to science. But you said people from a corporate background also enroll. So what kind of subject do they normally choose?
Management is there. So under management, I'll give you one example of one of our students who's the HR director of one of the top MNCs in India. And she joined for PhD program around 2.5 years back. She's basically from Bangalore. And after which, like her research area was something connected to HR, which is human resource. Now, this is how it is helping their career. Now, imagine like for any top, let's say Fortune 500 companies, any profile they are receiving, you have someone who's applying for a job who's an HR director from India or from any Asian countries, let it be, and they're having a PhD degree which is in human resource area, human resource management. The impact that it is having. Similarly, students from banking, students from like petroleum industries and academicians, plenty of students are from different part of the world.
Okay, that's news to me because I've never heard of anything like that. Okay, interesting.
See, normally there is a myth, Malavika, because normally people feel that PhD is boring, PhD is only for academicians, it is nothing. But this is the ultimate degree that you can in the country. So obviously, like when people are going forward and they are like pursuing their dream of having a PhD program, it means they have put their blood and sweat into it. And it means a lot for a lot of scholars across the globe.
Right. Okay, so how long will this take? What is the duration?
See, as per the UGC norms, the minimum course duration is 3 years and the maximum is 6 years. Now, for our students, we generally tell them only the minimum duration because we don't want them to go till like 6 years or 5 years. We don't want that. And when you're choosing Inspire, prepare yourself that you'll be completing in 3 years at max 3.5 years. That is why students are coming to us.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Well, I'm going to jump topics because something that just on the top of my head, there's a movie that I watched recently. It's a Malayalam movie starring Prithviraj, I think.
Janaganamana, right?
Janaganamana. Yeah. So I recently watched it.
See, Janaganamana is more like free branding for us.
Right.
Right after the movie, like we got a lot of calls from PhD aspirants. In reality, such things do happen. I don't want to name any particular instance. All you can do is just go to Google News and search for PhD harassment cases in India. I bet that in a fraction of a second, you'll find at least 700, 800 news articles from mainstream national medias. Okay? And the other thing is that only 0.001% of the cases get reported. Rest of the students, what they do, they simply drop out from the program.
Yeah. So owing to the unfortunate cases of harassment that we were talking about, how are you trying to make a difference in this area?
See, Inspire is basically an ecosystem. It is not a service provider which guides you only through the admission part and gives you one-to-one mentorship. It is an ecosystem where students from 15 to 16 countries are a part of. Now, when we say an ecosystem, what we do, we provide a common platform for our students where they can raise their concerns. Let's say that if like any students have to face any sort of difficulties or ill treatment, instantly they'll be able to escalate it to their counselors, or even I'll be part of such communities where they can just tag me and they can message me. And we'll take actions in the next 24 hours. How we do it? We directly interact with the chancellors, vice chancellors, and the dean research of those universities. And these are the top 3 people in the hierarchy. Okay, and chancellor is a founder or chairman of the university, and vice chancellor is more like a CEO of a company who handles all the top level decisions, and dean research is the head of research department. So when you are being like having a reference of all these top 3 people in the hierarchy when it comes to PhD program, then to an extent the students' safety is being protected.
Okay. All right. So you were also talking about other difficulties. I'm sure that someone who's going through PhD, which is, I'm pretty sure, takes 5 years or 6 years, it's a lot of mental stress.
It takes 3 years with Inspire, Malavika.
Oh, sorry, 3 years with Inspire, provided that they do everything right. But yes, I get it. 3 years with Inspire. But regardless, I can imagine the kind of mental stress. So what is your experience in that area, or what are the steps that you're taking?
See, first thing, like for a student, when they're enrolling for a PhD program, they should understand that, as I told you before, this is the ultimate degree that you're going to get in India. And that degree should be earned. You cannot simply pay a fee and get a PhD degree. It is not happening that way, at least with Inspire. Okay, so there are like certain things that the student has to contribute. And yes, there are working professionals who are doing PhD with us. But again, with us, what we do is we believe in technology leverage. So we educate our students on various platforms, tools that they can use while doing their PhD program that will make their lives easier. This is what we educate. And constantly, like let's say whether it is their research proposal writing, synopsis writing, thesis writing, we constantly educate our students on, like via webinars, one-to-one sessions, or video tutorials. We constantly mentor them. That is how we empower our students so that they can complete their work. But please note, we don't write it for them. You'll find plenty of agencies who will write your synopsis, they'll write your thesis, or even your research papers or publications. We don't do it. Basically, it's against the UGC guidelines. That is why we don't do it. But we educate and empower them so that they can do it by themselves.
Right. So it's kind of like a guiding, helping hand with.
Yes, it is a helping hand throughout their course duration and even after that. Because for programs like PhD, unlike your masters or bachelors, your masters or bachelors, let's say that you completed your masters in the year 2023, UGC doesn't review it after like 10 years or 20 years, right? But when it comes to PhD program, let's say that you have enrolled in the 2022 batch and in 2025, you have completed your PhD. UGC can review a degree even after 10 years or 15, 20 years. Even then, Inspire's support is there for you. That is why we always say to our clients, once you are a part of Inspire's family, forever you are a part. Our support is there throughout your lifetime. At any point after 20 years, like UGC is asking for a review, you can contact our counselors and they'll be helping you out.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So also you mentioned that you're going to be there with the students even after the course. So that brings me to my next question. What are some of the career opportunities that people can go for right after the PhD?
See, this is not your regular course wherein like these colleges and universities advertise that 100% placement and 80% placement. It is not that course. PhD is a course which you study when you have a clarity regarding your career. Okay, either right from day one or you're someone with around 5 years or 8 years or 10 years experience. Now, this is one such course. It is not something like we give you 100% placement support. It is not that kind of a course. And plus, imagine one thing like you are applying for a job. Let it be anything related to corporate. And alongside, there are like 25 other applicants who have the same qualification, the same experience, and everything is almost similar to your profile. And you are the only one with a doctor prefix. What will the impact you will be having or the HR will be having once they go through your profile? It takes us to the first point. Like with your visiting card or your business card, it is quite visible.
It's kind of like, it's self-explanatory kind of.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so let's say that I do eventually get a PhD tag, like a doctor tag right across my name. So if I were to get hired in a company due to that, what kind of changes can I potentially make in my work culture or my work environment?
A lot, I would say. I'll give you one example. Let's say that you have already enrolled for PhD program, and the first thing that you would be doing is something like a research proposal writing. Okay. Now, what is a research proposal writing? You're proposing your director or the dean research or your guide a particular topic for your research, and you're seeking their permission. And when you're trying to seek their permission, what would you do? You would try to justify why you have chosen this particular topic, right? Now, in this process, there is something called as a research gap, which is identifying a right research gap. I'll give you another example. It happened in the telecom industry in India about a decade back. So, have you ever used a Jio SIM card before? Okay. And may I know when you started using a Jio SIM?
Oof, probably 6-7 years ago.
If you look at Jio, they didn't find anything new or they didn't come up with a new product altogether, right? It was an existing market. The services were being provided by other competitors. During that time, I think Vodafone was there, Idea was there, Aircel was there, Airtel was there, plenty of telecom operators were there. Now, Jio came up with the same product. What you were doing with your Jio SIM card? You were making calls, you're browsing the internet, that's all, right? Even the usage pattern didn't change. What changed was the pricing strategy of Jio. They didn't price you on call. They priced you on your data usage. You were charged based on the data you were using every day, right? Now, what difference it had?
A huge impact. I think that was also the time when the entire world was switching to like online work and all of that.
Exactly. Now, if you look at data consumption per day, like across the globe, India is one of the fastest growing countries in terms of data usage. Now, the change that was brought in by Jio was nothing. Like they charged you based on your data usage per day, and while the other competitors were charging you based on your calls. Now, this is what we call as a research gap. Now, they would have their own R&D team. They would have done their own like homework. they would have come up with this idea like, we are not going to charge you based on your calls. Now, this is a mandatory process when you're doing your PhD. You have to identify a research gap. Now, imagine yourself, you're working with an organization where the services are being provided by the competitor too. There are plenty of players in the market, and you have to find a headroom for for the company's growth. You'll be better equipped to do it because your thought process have changed while doing your PhD program. You're used to it. You're used to finding ideal research gap or what is the headroom for growth. You're used to it.
Right. So it's basically a lot of case studies. What do you mean? Like research gap is basically a lot of case studies, and we find the. Is that what you explained?
It's something similar to it, but it case study plus innovation.
Something that we would have to bring
Exactly.
about on our own. Okay. All right. Okay, so that leaves a lot of room for innovation, like you said.
Absolutely.
Okay, makes sense. All right. So let's say I do want to apply for this. So what is the eligibility? I want to know if I'm eligible for it.
If you have 55% in your masters and if the degree is from a UGC approved university, then you are eligible. Plus, there are like 5% relaxations that are available for certain category of students. Now, for that, you have to contact our counselors. They'll check and they'll see if you're eligible as per the UGC norm.
Right. Okay. So, will there also be guidance for someone who's not sure? Because I understand that when you're choosing to do your PhD, you have to be very sure on what exactly you want. But let's say someone comes from a background of multiple roles and they're kind of confused about it. So, do you also have counselors who would guide us to make the right choice?
Absolutely. So day in, day out, we get a lot of such students like who have multiple master's degree. Now, more like someone who's having an MA English literature and they also having MEd, and they're really confused which degree they should go ahead with, whether it is PhD in English literature or they should go for something like PhD in education. Now, there's one advice that our team gives to them. What is your career plan for the next 10 years? That is the first thing that you have to address. Now, if you see yourself growing in like education sector where your role is more into management, or like you're managing a team of teachers, professors, or anything like that, then probably in that case you'll be going for PhD in education. Now, if you want to see yourself as an English professor or a teacher, maybe after 10 years, then we would advise you to go ahead go ahead with English literature itself. It all depends on what you're planning for the next 5 to 10 years. And these are not rare cases. Nowadays, you'll find plenty of students. We even have students who have an MSc degree plus an MBA, and they are confused whether I should do PhD in science or I should do in management.
Yeah, there's too many options to choose from.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. All right.
But these are good problems to have, okay?
Better this way than.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, would it be possible for a full-time worker to go for PhD, or?
Yes, as per the UGC norms, yes, it is possible. Now, PhD programs are being run in two modes. One is a part-time PhD program and the other one is a full-time PhD program. Now, Inspire's expertise is to cater students who are looking for part-time PhD programs. Those working professionals like who wants to do PhD but they don't have enough time, they don't know how to get into a PhD program, they know nothing about PhD program in fact. For such students, Inspire is a blessing because we cater everything to them. Okay, so being like a professional who's working like in full time, you definitely can do PhD program. Plus, you should meet the criteria that UGC mandates. Okay, that is one important thing. Plus, there are multiple selection process. Okay, so when it comes to PhD program, there are two selection process that are involved. The first one is the entrance exam, and the second one is the interview part. You have to clear both. Only after which you are a research scholar.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So when you said working professional, and you said you also offer part-time PhDs, right? So what if I'm someone who's taken a break from my professional life? Let's say a housewife. Would it be possible for such a person to also go for PhD?
Absolutely. If you're passionate, definitely you can do it. Now, even we have such students too. Now, students like who were working and after that they thought they'll take a couple of years break because of baby or like any other reason, personal reason. Now, how they use PhD is like they try to use it as a tool like when they are going back to their career. Let's say that they are taking around 5 years break. Second year, third year, they are joining for a PhD program. And when they are applying for a job after 3-4 years, they'll be mentioning it in their CV. They are pursuing PhD. So that helps them to find a better job too.
Okay, now moving on to a different conversation. This is something I love asking like industry experts. Can you debunk some of the myths associated to PhD?
The first one would be PhD would take more than a decade to complete. So, like people have to understand that as per the UGC norms, the minimum course duration for PhD program is 3 years. Whether it is part time, whether it is full time, it is 3 years. Now, universities have certain autonomous powers. Now, that is why you will find some of the other university, it will offer like a part-time PhD program, minimum duration 4.5 years, whereas full-time PhD program, they'll offer it as 3 or 3.5 years. Now, it is all up to the university. Now, as per the UGC norms, the minimum duration is 3 years. You don't have to wait for a decade to complete it.
Right. Okay. All right, that's interesting. Anything else just like this?
Recently, the one would be regarding UGC net. Okay. So last March, I think March 27th and 28th, UGC came up with a circular stating that the universities can use UGC net rather than conducting their own entrance examination. Now, if you look at it, all the media houses in Kerala, including the top one, they were all saying that now UGC net has been made mandatory for PhD. Without UGC net, you won't be eligible to apply, enroll for a PhD program. Inspire is the only platform which came up with the video content clarifying all those things. UGC has clearly stated that if a university wants to continue with their existing admission process, they're free to do it. Now, UGC net is it's not a mandatory rule. They don't have to like mandate UGC net for any PhD aspirants.
Okay, so instead?
Instead, the universities can conduct their own entrance exam. Now, this was clarified by the Secretary of UGC, Mr. Joshi, on 1st of March. Okay, he gave an interview to Education Times, if I'm not wrong. In that interview, he has exactly mentioned the same line. If a university wants to continue with their existing admission process, they are free to do it.
Right. Okay. All right. And do a lot of universities in India do that?
Yes, plenty of universities. If you look at it, I think last July or August, we had something like UGC net question paper leak issue. During that time, plenty of universities, including the Delhi University, they were discussing whether they can go back to their own entrance system, okay, because of the paper leak issue. So any university, they're free to do it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do we have one more final myth to debunk?
Final myth, PhD is only for nerds, maybe.
Yes. That's something I believed as well.
It is not that way. It is a highly competitive world. Now, you have to update yourself or else you won't be relevant in the market anymore. That's what makes PhD a very sensible decision to go ahead with.
Right. Okay. So moving on to a personal question, what is your association with PhD, or like what inspired you to, kickstart this platform?
See, PhD is not a product where like we did so much of R&D and finally we found an ideal product. Everyone is looking after PhD and nobody is catering it. It is not that way. We were into higher education institution marketing. We were being approached by multiple universities across India. And we came across one student, Muthu Kumar, from Thuthukudi, Stuticon. Okay. This student was behind us for a period of 6 months, 8 months. He was literally nagging us. And all he wanted to enroll for a PhD program. That is how PhD started. I tell this story to all my students. It is not something that we did deliberately or did so much of R&D. It is not that way. And absolutely. And once we started off with the PhD program, what happened? There are plenty of problems being faced by all these students. Now, if you look at it, I was explaining you about the services that we provide, which is like continuous mentorship program where we constantly educate our students. Plus, whenever there is an issue for the student, we escalate the matter to the top management. Now, all these things were not there when we were enrolling our first batch. Every batch, the one thing we tried to work on was we tried to identify the pain points of our students, and we constantly improvised on that. That is how like Inspire has been growing all these years.
Right. So how long has it been?
We started in the year 2011, and our first batch, they enrolled around 3 years back, and our first batch is about to pass out. and probably in another 1 month's time they'll complete their thesis defense, and that would be our first batch of PhD scholars.
Amazing. Okay.